On a fiery night at San Mamés, the roars of Spurs fans blended with the final whistle to compose a triumphant symphony they had waited 17 long years to hear. No more heartbreak, no more regrets. This time, Tottenham stepped onto the podium with pride in their hearts and the weight of history on their shoulders. They won, not with a dazzling performance, but with a victory soaked in spirit, grit, and belief. And that's why the 2025 Europa League Final didn't just close a chapter, it opened a new era for a club long labeled as eternal runners-up. Both sides started cautiously, but the tension was palpable. Heavy tackles and fierce duels filled the midfield. Spurs looked shaky early on, with signs of disconnection at the back. And yet, strangely enough, that's when the breakthrough came. In the 42nd minute, from what looked like a routine build-up, Pape Matar Sarr whipped in a low, awkward cross. Inside the box, Dominic Solanke tangled with Maguire, Brennan Johnson reacted on instinct, and Onana was a split second too late to recognize the danger. A soft touch from Johnson, a clumsy save attempt from Onana, and somehow the ball found the net. UEFA later credited Johnson with the goal, but the real story was United's defensive meltdown. No communication, no pressure, no urgency. For Spurs fans who had waited nearly 2 decades, this was the unlikeliest of goals to end the drought, a goal without a clean shot, yet one that cleansed years of pain. The second half told a completely different story. United surged forward, dominated 73% of possession, and launched 16 shots. But numbers meant nothing against a Tottenham defense that played like their lives depended on it. The most nerve-wracking moment came in the 69th minute. Vicario misjudged a set piece, Højlund rose above everyone and headed toward an open goal. But then came Micky van de Ven, leaping like a taekwondo black belt to clear the ball right off the line. A goal-saving moment that didn't just lift the crowd, it altered destiny. But Spurs' hearts weren't done racing. In the 90th minute, Luke Shaw, in a last-gasp attempt to make amends, fired a dangerous header. Vicario read it perfectly, diving full stretch to deny United one final hope. Referee Felix Zweier blew the final whistle, and the blue and white stands erupted into madness. No goal fest, just 27% possession, one shot on target. But that one shot delivered the Europa League title. In stark contrast, United left the pitch burdened. After 90 minutes of effort, their eyes turned skyward, not with regret, but with doubt. This wasn't a loss from bad luck. It was a tactical defeat. Spurs were better organized, more united, and, perhaps most importantly, willing to sacrifice style for silverware. Throughout most of the season, Ange Postecoglou's Spurs were defined by their bravery. High lines, aggressive pressing, and expansive football. But faced with the desperate Manchester United side chasing redemption, Spurs did something they rarely do. They let go of their philosophy and fought for survival. At kickoff, Spurs lined up in their usual 4-2-3-1, but as the match turned gritty, so did their shape. After Brennan Johnson's goal, Tottenham sat deep and gradually shifted into a 5-4-1 block, especially after Kevin Danso came on for Johnson. Within that compact shape, every player had a role, and the coordination was near flawless. Bentancur and Bissouma formed a solid shield in midfield, blocking central channels and protecting the back three. Pape Matar Sarr executed zonal pressing to perfection, neutralizing Bruno Fernandes, United's main creative spark. Out wide, Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie often tucked in to cover the second line, helping form a defensive diamond that was almost impossible to break down. If there's one thing that truly exposed Manchester United's helplessness, it was their failure to control the space between Tottenham's midfield and defensive lines, the notorious Zone 14. This is usually Bruno Fernandes' playground, where he delivers killer passes that unlock defenses. But in this final, Bruno completed just 11 passes in the first half, most of them in safe zones. The airtight coverage from Sarr, Bissouma, and Bentancur left him with no room to turn, no time to breathe, and no chance to pick a forward pass. Tottenham didn't need to dominate the ball to dominate the game. With just 27% possession, they made every counter-attack count. From Udogi's crucial interception on Ahmad inside the box to the breakaway that ended with Son missing a one-on-one with Onana. Spurs didn't launch textbook attacks, but they sliced through the match with razor-sharp intent, keeping United's backline constantly on edge, unable to push up with confidence. What made Spurs' performance even more fascinating was how they abandoned their usual high press. Instead of pressing in waves, they picked their moments. It was deliberate, it saved energy, and it confused United. Richarlison and Solanke played key roles here, cutting off Onana's distribution channels and disrupting United's build-up before it could even begin. We can't talk about this match without praising Micky van de Ven and Christian Romero. Van de Ven's goal line clearance was heroic, but it was his positioning in second ball situations that stood out. Romero, meanwhile, stood tall in every aerial duel with Højlund, a masterclass in leadership at the back. If this final was the ultimate test, then Manchester United left far too many blanks, and, more worryingly, failed to even understand the questions. Faced with a Spurs side that was deep, disciplined, and deliberate, United had no answers. It wasn't just a defeat in terms of scoreline. It was a collapse of structure, clarity, and spirit. Perhaps the most symbolic image of that collapse was Bruno Fernandes, frozen in place. Spurs didn't mark him man-to-man. They choked the space around him. With his space gone and time cut down, Bruno was forced to drop deeper and deeper, far from the areas where he could actually influence the game. Casemiro looked like a lonely figure lost in a sea of white shirts. Yes, his long passes were still sharp, but at 33 he couldn't cover ground or clean up danger like he used to. Mount failed to connect, Ahmad was isolated on the wing, and his solo attempts, while brave, lacked the weight to break Tottenham's defensive wall. If you need a single image to sum up United's impotence, it's Rasmus Højlund, stranded, starved of service, a ghost in a game that desperately needed a hero. With every cross misfired and every pass into the box miscalculated, the young striker was never given a chance. The blame can't be separated from manager Ruben Amorim either. He left the starting 11 untouched for far too long, even when it was clear Spurs had adapted by the end of the first half. Kobbie Mainoo, a potential game-changer, only came on in the 88th minute. Far too late. And when United needed urgency, Diogo Dalot was the answer. It raised more questions than it solved. Where Tottenham thrived on tactical flexibility and structure, United sank under the weight of rigidity and indecision. Another big game, another failure, and this time there's no European stage next season to fix it. For much of the footballing world, the 2025 Europa League might be seen as second-tier silverware. But for Tottenham Hotspur, this was the key that finally unlocked a door that had been bolted shut for nearly 2 decades. The last time Spurs lifted a trophy was back in 2008, a League Cup that now feels like a relic. Since then, they've lived through heartbreak, the 2019 Champions League Final, painful Cup semi-final exits, and even an unbeaten home season that still ended in second place. 17 trophyless years have carved scars into this club's identity. Every new generation of Spurs players walked onto the pitch burdened by history, by doubt, by pressure. That's why this Europa League title means more than silver. It's a healing moment, a break from the past, proof that Spurs not only know how to win, but have the courage to claim it. If there's one image that will live long in the memory, it's this. Son Heung-min, surrounded by his young teammates, lifting the Europa League trophy high into the Spanish night, the first Korean to captain an English side to European glory. But more than that, Son is the embodiment of the modern Spurs, humble, relentless, always rising in the big moments. After all the years of loyalty, of carrying the weight, he finally received his reward. The way he embraced Vicario, the way he bowed in gratitude to the fans. It wasn't just a celebration, it was a tribute to everyone who never stopped believing that Spurs would one day be called champions. As for Manchester United, this wasn't just the end of a final, It was the end of a miserable identity-less season. No trophies, no European football, and no solid ground left to stand on. Ruben Amorim arrived with hope. He walked off in silence. And as the final whistle echoed through San Mamés, only one question remained. Where does Manchester United go from here when they've forgotten who they are?